Okay, let's get closer. Okay, here we go. I feel like this angle is really weird.
I know, my boobs look super big.
We are online, but it's okay. We've started. Okay. Do you want to tag? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sydney Smith.
There you go.
All right. Well, we are rolling. And look at our fancy teacups.
It's filled with coffee.
And I didn't burn my mouth. It is coffee.
Coffee bee.
So, hello. So talk showish. I am here with Sydney Smith, aka ODB, for you guys that are in the roller derby community. When I rewatched the video I did with Punchy on Sunday, and I was like, oh, we're gonna talk with ODB. I was like, for my friends who aren't in derby, I wonder if they thought I was like gonna talk with the ODB.
Yeah, well.
And then I'm like,
we may have to channel him.
All right. Well, so we're talking about mental health, and kind of just not judging a book by its cover. I know that we're all guilty of it. Myself, I've done this before where you either look at a stranger or look at someone that you're friends with or you're, colleagues with, and you're like, man, that person is super weird or crazy, or you're kind of being judgy. And I think it's natural, that it's human, nature. Thank you. To do that. But what I want to do is make people more aware of what they're doing, because you need to ask yourself, what have they gone through? What are they going through? What's happened to them to maybe make them like this? And so I talked to Sydney at a roller derby tournament about this, and she really put things in perspective. And since then, whenever I see someone, I kind of think about it first before I'm like, oh yeah, that person's not right. Well, maybe they aren't, but there's a reason, and it's not, and it's okay. And so I wanted her to tell her story and share and what she's gone through, what she's going through, and how she has come to be the awesome person she is. She founded Resurrection Skates, and also she just started doing Alchemista, right? We practiced before.
Alchemista Silver, yes.
Alchemista Silver, which, can we show off your jewelry?
Yes. Some of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this.
Okay, yes. So check that out. Follow her on Instagram. Are you on Instagram?
Yep.
Yeah,
and
you are.
Facebook. Yep.
And Facebook. So I'm going to hand it over to Sydney to kind of start at the beginning, and then kind of we can snowball off of that. And
yeah. So, happy to be here. Happy to
At your
talk
own
about. Happy to be here with you in my own home.
Look
and
at this. Look how fancy this is.
And talk about some of the things, I guess, and challenges I've gone through in my life. And I guess it kind of starts with my diagnosis. So at the age of 19, I was put into a hospital care unit. Shout out to care unit, because I still have friends still from there. And I ended up there at about 80 pounds. I was 18 years old, and hearing voices. Was doing a lot of drugs. My jam was LSD, meth, ether. I was...
So you went all in.
Oh yeah, I was all in. I was living in a house with 3 or 4 heroin addicts, and regularly having to resuscitate them. Wow. And basically, I don't recall the exact moment, but my mother found something in my wallet, and it was like an old Doors lyric. But it was the end is near, or the future's uncertain, the end is always near. And she was like, well, you're going to rehab. So
that's what
the lyric.
Okay.
It wasn't that I was 80 pounds and I wasn't sleeping for days and my eyes were bugged out and my skin was terrible. It was that she found a lyric. So I ended up in the hospital, and I was in there with a bunch of people that were way worse than me. Like mothers that were leaving their kids in cars while they were turning tricks. I was in there with
Wow.
airplane pilots that were popping pills. I had nurses that were heavily drinking, and just it was insane. And I just
Now,
realized,
is this in Dallas or?
it was in Fort Worth off Magnolia
Okay.
Boulevard. So right over there by what is that?
I don't know.
Spiral Diner. Anyway, off Magnolia. So yeah, I got out of there and tried to get on the straight and narrow, and did pretty good for a really long time. And it was in there that they diagnosed me as bipolar. But I knew really early that something wasn't right with me. I had been assaulted when I was the summer before 10th grade, so I knew something was going on. And from there on, I knew that shit wasn't right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hung out. I got out of rehab, and I immediately relapsed, and then hit the club scene. Like, I was in the club scene for I don't know how long. Interestingly, me and one of my childhood best friends, we started the first rave in Dallas.
Okay.
So, yep, and that was probably in 1990 something. But yeah, just hung out, did the scene, worked at Club Clearview, all the different clubs out in Deep Ellum, and then I met my children's father, and ended up getting married, was with him, and got pregnant, and that was a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Back in 95, you didn't take any kind of antidepressants, anything like that. I also was heavily into church, and so his thing was, you don't need to take medicine, all you need to do is pray.
Were you always heavily into church, or was that like a thing of getting back kind of?
Actually, I was.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, I was born and raised Catholic. My mother is Hispanic.
Okay.
And so
I did not know that.
You did not know that. This
We're like related.
Exactly. I'm telling you, I'm a Chavez and you're a Herrera. So I was raised in Catholic church, so I went to Catholic school my whole elementary, and then in high school I went to. So I was always in church.
Okay.
Always. And yeah, so got married, had kids, was married to somebody that did not encourage me taking medicine. So I kind of just...
That's hard.
Especially when you're bipolar and you're not taking medicine, and then when you have kids and you have all of that stress and pressure on you.
I don't understand how you survive that.
Well, it gets even crazier. So
there's more.
I ended up having just... I couldn't stay married. I didn't want to be married. I loved him. I didn't want to be married. I just wanted to get out of the house. I wanted to do my thing. And so what I found being bipolar is one of the things we deal with is that we have trouble with relationships. So I've been, it's embarrassing for me to say, but I've been married and divorced 3 different times. I mean, it's
Ross on Friends has too.
Hey,
so, I mean, it's okay.
Ross, then it's okay. Yeah, it's that's one of the things that I've had to deal with as having this mental illness is the ability to stick it out, because literally if I get pissed off, I'm like, fuck this, I'm out.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I've had to learn how to deal with, and as I get older, I've learned how to fight for what I want, to learn how to communicate and to compromise. It's not always me. It's not always my way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I as we discussed, I went through a lot of treatment as far as taking my meds, going to therapy, going into rehab, had my brain studied by the University of Chicago.
That's super cool.
Was determined that I was a high-functioning bipolar, which is interesting. But despite all of that, I ended up going to school, putting myself through school, going to a private college and graduating. So
That's awesome.
a lot of people with this mental illness, they don't do that. They can't do that. And that's, I mean, I still struggle every single day with the racing thoughts and just making sure that I keep my shit tight.
So what do you currently do that helps? Like, what is something that maybe, like, someone that's listening, you know, can relate in some way? Like, what's something that has helped you?
That's a hard question because I take my medicine. I sleep a lot. That's one of the things.
Sleep is awesome.
My boyfriend Matthew has been very gracious, and that he knows that when my body starts to shut down, he's like, "Go sleep."
Yeah.
And I've trained my kids the same way. So yeah, basically sleep, baths.
I like that you said you trained your kids.
Yeah. I literally train my kids. They can look at me and they say, "Mom, you need to go take a nap." And I'm like
sleep.
down. Yeah, I'm down for 2 hours and I'm back up. So
when I'm annoying Joel, he says, "Go to sleep."
There you go. Yeah, so there's nothing in particular. Like, I don't run like punchy.
Yeah.
I don't, what I used to do was play derby. And that was really good because it allowed me to get physical, which is another byproduct of this wonderful disease that I have. Being bipolar is you're dealing with the manic side and the depressive side. The depressive side is I can't get out of bed. The manic side for me is I want to fight. I'm very aggressive, and it's embarrassing. You know, it's like even as a kid, I was always fighting. If it wasn't my brothers and sisters, it was girls and boys. I mean, just anybody that crossed me, I was fighting.
So do you feel like you're aware of it, or is it something that just kind of happens and then afterwards you're like, oh man?
It used to just happen, and like we discussed, I would just kind of black out and I would just do whatever I needed to do to get my point across. But I was tested recently. I went to a Willie Nelson concert with my man.
Oh yeah.
And this woman literally was screaming at me and Matthew and threw popcorn in his face, and it was everything I could not to choke a bitch. And I walked out, and I was like, I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk for like 2 days. I was so pissed because
that's huge. I mean, people don't realize that because walking away, especially when your whole life, this is what you've done, and then that takes a lot of self-control.
It does. My family's childhood name for me was Junkyard Dog. Because
why wasn't that your derby name?
Right. Well, it was a consideration, but I was always literally fighting. And if I was telling Matthew a story the other day that I had a guy or a girl come over that was messing with my brother and, beat the hell out of her. And she's like, I'm bringing my sister over tomorrow. I was like, bring her over. So she came over. I beat the hell out of her too. I was like, who's next? But yeah, one of the things is like, I just had to learn how to get my temper under control. And the way I think of it is I'm 50. In 2 months, I'll be 50 years old. That's old.
50 is like the new 30.
Well, yeah, right. Okay, yes. But I'm like, I can't be whipping ass at 50, I just can't. That's like too, I don't want to say it's trashy, but it's trashy, But I can whip your ass if I have to.
Well, and nowadays, though, like, it's just, you can't with social media around and, like, just everything.
Yeah.
People are nuts. I mean, that lady could have had a gun. I mean,
exactly.
There's just so many things. It's different now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm acting like I was, partying in the 90s. I mean, I was like partying at the skating rink. I was like, I don't know. I'm not going to do math. I was young.
Yeah.
But it is different. Like, it's scary, every day, like, I watch the news and it's like, someone, road rage, like I saw some dude shoot at a guy because he didn't put his blinker on. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I mean, that takes a lot of self-control because people are stupid.
Yes.
Especially in crowds.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, I don't remember what it was. I think maybe it was you speaking to Punchy, but you're talking about, where your worth is. And I was thinking to myself, okay, today, where does my worth lie? And if I were to like really think about it, my worth has always been my children. Like they are who will take on the torch for me. And I may not have been the most calm or elegant or PTA mom, but my kids love me. Like they still live here, Tristan's right there, Zoe's upstairs, and we have a relationship where we're all on the same page. We always say there's no secrets in this house. There aren't, and they know that even if they're drank too much or they smoked too much or whatever they did, they know that they
I remember you
to
telling me that last time we visited.
So yeah, it's been good. It's not been easy, and I think I shared with you that in 2010 their father died. So
which I did not know that.
Yeah. Which is surprising because I usually post about once a year about it. So, I've been a single mom on and off for their entire life.
On top of dealing with mental illness.
On top of dealing with mental illness.
And they are
going to school.
Really great kids.
Yes, they're
too,
awesome.
Is...
Yeah. My oldest is going to school for doing the exact same thing I am. So she's like, she is not messing around. She wants to make that shmoney. And Zoe does her own thing. She marches to the beat of her own drum, and she's into music. And I always, when I think about Zoe, she'll be some kind of like artist, or I saw this documentary on MIA the other day. And it was,
you're gonna have to tell me what
fascinating. But it was like she went to art school. She was all about music and giving some kind of message. And my kids being half black and half white, I always try to keep them abreast on politics, on race, on just them,
everything that's happening in the world right now.
And I always tell them, it's like you've got a half Hispanic, half white mother trying to teach you how to be black, because there's no one here to teach you that.
That's something that I would never even think of. Like, you're totally right.
Yeah.
And this is kind of off topic, but I want to bring it up because that reminds me, like, I was working with a pediatric physical therapist, and she was working with kids, like a lot of kids that are in the foster system and whatnot. And they said that there was this family that was lined up to adopt these two black kids that had special needs and needed a physical therapist and like a speech therapist, and really wealthy. I mean, they're in Coppell, like, how Coppell is. And the judge did not grant it to them because he was a black judge, and he said there's no one in that house to raise them.
Yeah.
And it's like, I sat back and I was like, that's so crazy to me.
Yeah.
I mean, and I get what you're saying, like teach them how to be like with their culture and whatnot. And it's just so crazy. That's something people don't think about.
Yeah.
So
it's me having to teach them, what were the Tulsa riots? What does 40 acres and a mule mean? Those kinds of things. And one of my goals this year is to, and I think I hear one of them. Here's one of them. Me getting some kind of DNA test to figure out exactly where they are. Here's my Zoe right now. Hi, girl.
Do you want to make a special appearance?
Come say hello.
This is the artist.
This is my artist, who I think will one day be another little MIA, hopefully.
Who's an artist?
You
are.
Since when?
So,
what art do I produce?
You. Okay, so
Yes.
So it's been the greatest joy I've had to be blessed with being the person to raise these two kids and know that they're going to go on and do their thing.
Yeah.
Whether they reproduce after that, all I know is I've done my job, and I may not have been, like I said, the PTA mom or something like that. But I am the best mother that
I
they
would
have.
love to see you on a PTA though. I think that would have been a really great reality
It's
show.
funny because they would come home and they would give me their paperwork, and I was like, I'll give you $5 to tell them don't bother me again. So it's interesting. It's interesting.
So going back to kind of just functioning. You say that you're a high functioning bipolar.
Yeah.
So sleep is something that
Yeah.
is like your go-to, and that helps.
Absolutely. Yep.
And Derby, fine. Like
Was good. Yep.
so, and I feel like music. I mean, you're.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you brought that up. My parents
I'm
owned a
such
radio
a
station.
professional.
No, my parents owned a radio station growing up in New
Oh,
Mexico.
really?
So
Okay.
yeah, I was raised from the moment I was born. There was music in my home. So
I think it's so important.
absolutely. So I was always raised around it. Growing up, the plan was each child was supposed to get their own house and their own radio station. That was the plan.
As is
Mine-
everyone's.
But my joy and my love was the minute I heard hip hop music.
Yeah.
There was just something about it, and so my radio station was going to be called KSYD, and its format was going to be hip hop music. Unfortunately, that didn't come into fruition. In the 80s, there was like some mad oil bust. Everyone went broke. Everyone was setting their businesses on fire, and we basically loaded everything we had into trailers, and we picked a point on the map between my mother's family in Albuquerque and my father's family in Oklahoma, and it was Dallas. And we just
Okay.
moved here, and we started
You
over.
just picked
Yeah.
that was just okay. That's
And that
cool.
was it. And so from that day on, it's just like I have just always had a love of hip hop music. And then, I'm always about punk rock music. And, I don't really do country except for Willie. But, I listen
He's in his
to,
own category.
Yeah, totally. But, music is my jam. And thankfully I found somebody that is equally in love with music.
Yes, I saw
So-
he has an office that's full of records, which is super
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So full of records is
Yeah.
an understatement. There's probably about 10,000 records in there, and yeah. So it was several trips trying to move them out of storage into our home.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's as much of a nerd as I am, and we love to entertain in our home.
Yeah.
So the last time we entertained was a couple of weeks ago
Mm-hmm.
for our friend Mark's birthday, and we had an 8-foot table with 4 decks, and we had like 10 different DJs come out and come spin.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
And I've used music as therapy for
Yeah.
myself, and always have a go-to
Yeah.
of how, depending on how I'm feeling. So
Yeah.
like, who's your go-to? Like if you're feeling like not right or not in a good headspace, like what is your go-to that kind of just calms you down?
oh, calms. Well, I've got a chill playlist, but if I need to
okay,
get
yeah,
hype,
okay. Tell me everything. Hype,
okay,
chill,
So
whatever.
my hype.
The people need to know.
The people need to know. It's always going to be. I've got a playlist called "Don't Touch My Old School" or "My New School." So it's composed of everybody from A Tribe Called Quest
Okay.
to KRS-One to Poor Righteous Teacher to basically I've been in the music scene for so long that I grew up in every single person I've listened to. We probably have that record upstairs.
That's awesome.
So yeah. So as far as like chill out, I don't know. I like right now. I'm kind of listening to like Fortet or I like Blockhead.
Never heard of these.
Yeah. So it's just kind of like chill ambient type. What I go to sleep to.
Okay.
But and then it could turn into something like, I don't know, Anthony Hamilton, which is very soulful.
yeah.
I like him. If I need to get my Jesus on, it could be something like Kirk Franklin. So, it's just
huge
a
variety.
hodgepodge
Yeah.
of everything.
That's awesome.
So
Very
yeah,
cool.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, I know, I'm assuming that Sydney's really open. So if like you want to shoot her a message, ask you have maybe bipolar runs in your family, or maybe you have a relationship with someone who is bipolar and you're just having a hard time. I think that it's always good to reach out to people, and that's a lot of why I like to do this, because it's not like you're walking around with an advertisement of like, hey, I'm bipolar, this is what I've gone through, so people don't know.
But I think they could look at me and say, man, that bitch is crazy.
I know, and I just told her that if I had to describe you, if someone's like, oh, do you remember ODB? I say, yeah, she was crazy, but in the most positive way.
Yeah.
And because crazy can be a positive.
Yeah. It's a great thing.
It's a great thing.
And I've learned to embrace that.
And that's what's so important is accepting who you are. And I do want to say this because it's super important, and I had talked to Sydney about it before we hit live. When you are diagnosed with anxiety or bipolar or maybe just anything, and you act a certain way, it's never an excuse to act like a shithead. When I was in the hospital, one of the social workers it said something that stuck with me. You can't use it as an excuse. Oh, well, that's just how they are.
Yeah.
No, change it. I mean, there are things that you can't change, but you don't use it as an excuse to be rude or to
fight.
Or to just act like a lunatic. And so I think that that's really important to embrace, like you said it perfectly, like embrace who you are. And, if you are friends with someone that has a mental illness, just be there. I mean, that's all you can do. And I've witnessed this and experienced this where someone's like, well, I just don't know how to handle that.
Yeah.
You don't have to know how to handle it. As long as you just check on me, that's okay. So if you have a significant other or a friend, a family member that's going through something, I just check on them. You don't have to bring it up. You just say, hey, how are you? Check in with someone.
Yeah. I think the most interesting thing is I have an inner circle that works with me. My children are in my inner circle. My boyfriend, my sister, my best friend Brenda, and I've got a very close-knit group of people that understand me, that I could call and just like, I need to talk right now.
Yeah, and
or I'm at your door right now.
Yeah.
And the most interesting thing is when I would speak to my best friend Brenda about this, I would say, aren't you like this? And she's like, no. And that floored me. I was like, nobody is like this. Nobody can feel these extreme highs and these devastating lows. But you know what?
It kind of makes you feel alone.
Actually,
I have felt that way.
Yes and no. Yes, it makes me feel alone, but it also makes me feel special. And it also makes me feel like I would never change.
Yeah.
Because there's no way anyone else could have reached the tippy top of where I've been and the lows and lows. Because like in between those two polar opposites, there's art, there's beauty, there's words, there's music, there's...
You're unique, and that's what's so important. I think that's so awesome.
Yeah.
You're not, the everyday average person that's just walking down the street. Like, you have a story, and I think that that's more important than anything. And I just want people to know that you can be weird, you can be unique, you can be awesome, and you just have to embrace it and accept it and love yourself. And I think that goes back to self-care. And I always say, like, just practice self-care. I went through a period where I just did not know what self-care was, and it was really hard. And then when I started, enjoying stuff and doing stuff that I liked, I felt so much better, and I felt like me, and I'm starting to like myself again. And it's so important, because if you can't appreciate or like or love who you are, then it is hard to love someone else.
Absolutely. And that was one of the biggest things I learned, is that I love myself 100%. Like there's like little parts of me that, there's still shame and there's still guilt and things like that. But for the most part, I couldn't love somebody else fully until I love myself. And, you know, the most important thing I want to say is take your medicine. Like,
Yeah.
it's there for a reason. I know so many people that don't want to take their medicine because it's like, I don't believe in Western this or that. And
Sometimes
you know
you just
what?
have to.
You have to. For me, it's a life or death thing. I've been on it on and off since I was like 19. And I've tried to go off it a couple of different times. And, you know, eventually maybe one day I can. But at 50, it's right there. It's right
Yeah.
there on my cabinet. I needed, before we spoke tonight,
Yeah.
I needed to make sure I took my meds because I was feeling real anxious. So, you know, for those that are diagnosed, please take your medicine. If you think that you're okay and you can get off of it, tell somebody you're getting off of
Yeah.
it. And
Communicate.
have somebody watch you and at least talk to your doctor, because chances are you're going to have to go back on because you're going to slide into some real deep shit.
Yeah.
And you can't, when you're in there, it's so hard to crawl out.
It's a
So
quicksand.
don't get in
Yeah.
there. So yeah, take your meds.
Yeah, seriously, and you know, don't be embarrassed about
Yeah.
it. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean,
shit.
my backpack, I put it on, and it sounds like a pharmacy, so it's okay. Well, thank you guys for watching. Friend Sydney on Facebook if you
Yeah.
haven't already. Reach out to myself, and until next time, peace out.
Peace.